sure. This is our first free help. So it's going to be pretty much the basics, where to best practices in setup, what you need to do in Filevine, kind of the lingo, that sort of stuff. And then we'll actually go through the process of setting up a report and connecting it to your S3 bucket and then to DOMO from there. So hi, I'm Stephanie with Vine Skills. This is Hillary, and we're going to talk about Periscope. So I don't know exactly where you guys are coming from in Periscope. If you're new to Periscope, if you're in Periscope and looking just to improve your usage of it. So wherever you are in your journey, I wanted to start with best practices. Your Periscope starts with Filevine reports as a base. So what you want to consider is how your fields are laid out in Filevine. What's the best build for Periscope, and how do we get that data into a report to get it into the S3 bucket in Periscope. So I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so I'm here in Vine Skills Sandbox in our best practices personal injury template. And if we have anyone who is not with personal injury, if you could just drop your law type into Periscope, and I'll try to focus on not just personal injury setup. So Periscope works on data sets. Periscope 1, if you had original Periscope, that basic setup was 4 data sets. And if you have Periscope 2, you get up to 15 data sets, I believe. Social Security, awesome. Thank you, Catherine. A data set, what is a data set? I think that's the first thing that's most confusing for people. What is a data set? How do I even know that so that I know what I'll be able to report on? A data set is a Filevine report. Anything that you can get into one Filevine report will constitute one data set. So if you're looking to report on active caseloads, so what your caseload is by team, what your caseload is by phase, what your caseload is by case type. If you are looking to report on intake metrics, most of that data typically lives in a static section, like the intake or case summary. You could pull all of those fields into one report. I typically call just project info. That's one data set. If you also want to run a report on, for example, settlement figures, we want to see what we've brought in by fees, by case type, by firm attorney, by referral source. If your settlement section is a collection section, this is a static section. If your settlement section is a collection section, that's going to be its own report. Actually, let me show you here. I have one built out in my workers' compensation template. Oh, Lord, I have a lot of sections in here. So here is our collection section for settlement. Collection section, when you're looking to set up a DOMO report to report on settlement, the collection section is actually going to be easier to set up your DOMO boards, but do not fear if you have a static section. You can use DOMO's advanced data flow, ETL tool, in order to create a data flow to get them all into one board. But if you're a beginner, settlement section as a collection section is going to be the easiest. But for everyone who's been in Filevine, you know that there are limitations on how you can pull data from collection sections. If you want to report on the individual fields within the collection section, like the settlement type, who the settler is, if you may have a different person in your office who may be responsible on a personal injury case for different settlements, like maybe one person might settle the BI while someone else might settle the UM/UIM. And you want to be able to give each person proper credit. All of that you'll need to pull into one report for the collection. You can pull static fields into this report as well. So you could report across referral sources in this one report, but your settlement report is going to be its own data set. If you are looking to report on your medical sections, So say, for example, on a personal injury claim, you are trying to find out for records that are being requested by staff member or even by provider, what the average turnaround is between requested and received. That data is only available if you run a medicals report. So that's going to be its own data set. So to help you out, and I can make this available to anyone who would like it, I actually have a list of fields, commonly used fields for the basic DOMO reports. And I've labeled it by data set, but I've also given you a little bit more information regarding, so this is just a static report for project info. You could see that I'm pulling in client information, I'm pulling in handling staff information, physical office location if you have multiple offices, create date, incident date, phase. I'm pulling in referral source information, intake information. I'm pulling in projections. Now, this isn't possible for all law types. It's not possible. Workers' comp, I don't know, try to figure it out. Personal injury, it's actually pretty straightforward. So if you have fields for that, I would suggest those go in the case summary section or wherever you kind of hold that random information. Your staff assignments, that sort of stuff. Review information. If you have fields in Filevine where you're tracking client reviews, the number of stars, the date of the review, the location of the review. If it's in a static section, I put that in this report. And then you have your client demographic information. And that's all one data set. You could see that we could build a lot. When we get into DOMO, you'll see that we could build a number of dashboards, not just cards, but full dashboards with just this one data set. We also have the medical data set that I spoke of. We're pulling in balance, the dates that records and bills were ordered and received, the initial charge, provider name information, treatment status. We have a demands and negotiations report. Now, depending on your setup, if you were built out by Filevine a couple of years ago, you probably have your negotiations and your demands in the same section as your settlements. You would only need one data set. You would not need both of these. You only need a separate settlements data set if your settlement information is handled separately from your negotiation information. And then the last two are all standard. So you don't have to worry about figuring out which field in your template corresponds to any of these fields here, because these are all custom fields. The last two are Filevine standard data points. So you just pull them into the report. You don't have to figure it out. And we're pulling in task information, and we're pulling basically an audit log. And then these are the various data points from those reports that I pull in. All right. So I'm going to go into the report builder here. Is there anyone who actually needs me to walk through setting up an S3 bucket? If you want to pop that in the chat. If not, then we'll just skip that part. Okay, so you're going to want to build your reports without any limiting criteria. I know based on your experience in Filevine that you're used to adding the criteria in your Filevine report so that you can visualize clearly what you're looking for. We're going to do the heavy lifting in DOMO. So don't worry about adding any of that here. And what I'm going to do is start with a list of projects. And I'm going to grab some of these fields. Let me just pull this over here so I could see both at the same time. And we're just going to do something basic right now. We will do the task report. When you do your data sets, other than tasks, including tasks, you're going to want to include archived cases. I know by default, archived cases are excluded, but like with the other criteria, we can exclude those in DOMO. So there are some times where you are going to want to see archived data and other times where you will not want to see archived data. A good example, you do not want to see archived cases on an active caseload report. You will want to see archived cases on your fees report, because you are going to want to be able to look at fees, not just for open cases, but historical data. You're going to want to look for the current year. You may even want to look at a year over year comparison for prior years. What's happening with these Filevine reports is Filevine's running them daily. And with the exception of the audit log, it's overwriting the data daily. So it's not storing the data in DOMO. It's not appending the previous day's reports. It's overwriting it. It's an entirety. So if you are not including archived cases, you will be missing out on that data because it's not living in DOMO. So we have our audit report here. I think this pretty much, I'm sorry, task report. I think this pretty much has what we need. Project name, assigned to, and I always put these in the same order because that's just how my brain works. Completed by, author name, last activity. We do not need the link. We do need the assigned date. Oops, I got too many organizations. Assigned date. We need target date. We have no text. We need no type. And we need created at and completed date. Okay, fantastic. Now, when we're choosing our criteria, again, we're going to want to include archived projects. And that is really only if you want a time over time view for reporting. If you are not looking to go back and compare someone's average task completion last year compared to this year, then you do not need to include archive tasks. However, if you want to look at productivity this year versus last year, or even 2 years ago, the only way to obviously do that is to make sure that cases that may have been archived are pulled in. That does increase the amount of data that you're pulling from Filevine, so keep that in mind. For our purposes, I'm going to say yes. And run my report. So you'll see here, I'm pulling both complete and incomplete tasks. I'm sure that you are used to, when you're looking at task reports, adding a lot more criteria, looking at only tasks that are incomplete and whose target date is today, on today or before today, right? So we're pulling everything in because we're going to apply that criteria in DOMO. We come here, we're going to save. And I always label these DOMO. I don't know about you, but so I'm in a number of client environments and I build out reports all day long. And some of my client environments, I have like 100 reports built out and I forget what they're connected to. I forget if they're in a Fusion. I forget what we're using them in. So if it's report used in Fusion, I always put Fusion in front. If it's report I'm using in DOMO, I put DOMO in front. If I'm using it as an export report in a collection section, I put export in front. And that just helps me know, like, if I'm making a change to this, that I might be impacting something else. So now that I've saved that, you do not need to share it with anybody. And you will want to do this. So if you have someone doing this for you, another partner, you're going to want to make sure that they're setting up these reports using a firm user login. So either give them your login information, which I don't necessarily suggest, it's not secure, or set up a reporting user. That way the reports will be owned by the firm. If you ever, once the partner is long gone, or whoever is doing this for you is long gone, you will still own the reports. You own that user. It's not actually being worked by someone. You can email Filevine or Slack Filevine, let them know that we're adding an admin user. They'll make a note on your account, request that they don't charge you for it. And then you will always own these reports. You can go in at a later date to update them, to change them, to add data points, whatever you need to do without having to build a whole new report, or call the partner that set you up. Well, I'd be happy to hear from you. Obviously, you want to be able to own your data and have control over your own data. I recommend info@vineskills.com or something generic like that. Or of course, use like the owner's login, something like that, so that the login for a user that you know is not going anywhere. So once we've done that, we're going to go to this option here. Before you had Periscope, this is only visible if you have Periscope 2. Before you had Periscope 2, you wouldn't have seen this. So we're going to go ahead and click CSV report. And this is where we're going to schedule this to be delivered to the S3 bucket. So if you do not have an S3 bucket already, you will need to set it up. A basic bucket is free. At a certain point, you do get charged depending on how much data you're pulling in. I have no idea where that line is. So you'll need to read the documentation on the AWS website in order to figure that out. The S3 bucket can be a little confusing to set up just because the AWS website is built out by and for people much smarter than me. I don't understand a lot of the language there, but I followed Logan's instructions and I can provide those to anyone who needs them on how to set up the S3 bucket. If you follow the instructions are very good. If you follow them point by point, you shouldn't have any problems setting up your S3 bucket. And you do need a credit card on file to set that up in case you do exceed their data limits for the free account. So what we're going to do is we're going to modify the delivery location first. You'll see that this is set up to go to your saved reports. So that's right here where you can go in and to your saved reports and just grab it. Because this is a CSV and because we're pulling a lot more data than we would typically pull into a Filevine report, they're not available necessarily instantaneously. It really depends on how much data you're pulling in. Sometimes you have to wait for that CSV to be available. So we're going to modify the delivery location. And I already have my S3 bucket set up. We actually have a couple, so I could select that here. If you were going to configure a new location, if you were just connecting a new S3 bucket, and you only have to do this once, you would pick, if you have multiple orgs, say, for example, you have an HR org and you have a cases org, you would select that here. Your location name is going to be the bucket location. This is also in the instructions. And then your data connected type is going to be the AWS S3 bucket. So then from there, you're going to need your access key and your secret key. And that's actually a really good, I'm sorry, region is the location of your S3 bucket. I can't remember what location name is. It's on the instructions though. Your access key and your secret key. When you set up your S3 bucket, if you've not already done so, you will be able to access your access key anytime you log in. You can find it in your S3 bucket. You will only see your secret key when you are creating your bucket. You must write it down or download the CSV and save it in a secure place. You will not be able to access that data point again. You will need that to connect it to Filevine and to connect it to DOMO. So make sure, just the first time, so make sure you save it. If you lose it, you will need to create a new S3 bucket. So here I am in my S3 account. When I first log into Amazon, I'm brought here. You can search up here for S3. And it'll take me to the management console. And then from here, I actually have two buckets set up. I have one set up for automation testing and this one set up for DOMO. So you'll see in here, this is the name of my bucket. We go over to properties, you'll see this is my region. And the only portion of that you need is this. You'll also see additional information here. It is, if you wanted to give someone else access to your S3 bucket, that actually, those instructions are not on the instructions. That actually gets a lot trickier. So I would just recommend, if you need to give someone else access to the S3 bucket for some reason, like I need it when I'm setting up for my clients, my clients actually give me their login credentials and then change their password when we're done. All right, so back here, I'm not going to set up a new bucket. I'm simply going to choose the one that I want my reports to be delivered to. And I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to schedule settings. So at the moment, you could pick generate once, generate daily. So we're going to have this generated daily, and you're going to select your time zone. So this will be delivered to the S3 bucket every morning. Click save and export. So that is going to deliver that report to the S3 bucket on the schedule that I've set. So that means it's not showing up tomorrow, which means I won't be able to connect that report to DOMO until tomorrow. So what I'm going to go do, and I'm just going to export it again, and this time I'm going to choose as soon as possible to push that over here as quickly as possible. So we'll see how long that takes. Actually, I wonder if it's here. All right, so we'll come in here, and once we have our reports available for us in the S3 bucket, then we can connect them to DOMO. You're going to do that by coming to data, and you're going to go to connectors. You're going to search S3, and you're going to select an account. So I already have my account here. This is the same S3 account that I just connected to Filevine. If you do not have it here, you're going to connect it, and you're going to need that access key. And again, that secret key, and then that bucket location. So that's going to be the bucket name, and then your region here. Once they're connected, you'll be able to simply select, from the list, and then click next. From there, you are going to need to tell it only the file name. We're looking just for the partial file name. So what we want to do is grab basically everything before the underscore and then the date. So for this one, it's going to be list of projects underscore test. We would copy and paste. Then you are going to schedule it every day. And if this is being delivered to my bucket around 5 a.m. Eastern time, I'm going to have DOMO pick it up around 6. And then give it a name. You can change the names once you have them in. Just name it something that you understand or that you recognize. And I would choose the same name that you had it in Filevine, just to make it clear. And now we are connecting. You'll see when your data comes in that you'll have data here. So you'll have 11 columns and 2 rows. You can actually go look at the data yourself. Keep in mind that this is our sandbox. So we are not actively working cases here, which means that our data is not great for demonstration purposes. I apologize. Once you're in here, with your data connected, you can go to your dashboards. So if any of you are in the position where you've gotten this far, but now what do you do? Because Filevine handed you your environment and you have the demo data attached to it. How do you get your data connected to the boards, right? The boards look pretty. This is everything I want to start with, and I'll figure out what I want more of later. But how do I get my data connected? It's in, connected. So you have a couple of options. If you go to those demo data sets, so you can see we have a lot of things connected here. So we'll go to the case data demo just because it's a little bit easier. You could see that this is connected to 87 cards. So if I go in here, I could take a look by going up here next to the data. If we go to cards, I could take a look at each card that is connected to that demo data set. And if I really wanted to, I could en masse switch these cards to my data set. I do not recommend doing this. And the biggest reason is, well, two reasons. Your data points may have different names. It may be the same thing. Like if we go back to that common field spreadsheet, it may be the same like data point. We're looking at a referral source, but if you have it named something differently than what Logan has it named in the demo data set, it's not going to automatically swipe itself out. You will have to go into each card and fix it. And then the other reason I do not suggest swapping these out in mass is that Logan has what's called beast mode set up. And they're basically formulas that we use to calculate things that aren't on your data set to show you things. And those beast modes are saved to the data set. They're not saved to the card. So that means if you swap out the data set, you lose your beast mode formulas, and then you're just staring at it like, I don't remember what the formula was. The formulas aren't necessarily difficult. If you're an Excel person, you're good with Excel formulas. Beast modes are similar. They use different language, but it's the same general concept. Still, I recommend, instead of doing this, I recommend going into the board you want to swap out. And we will go, let's start with active inventory. And I recommend duplicating the screen, pulling one tab onto a separate monitor, opening the card in both, the same card, open the same card in both tabs, and work in one while comparing to the other. That way you will have one screen, because the changes don't save until you click save. So you'll be able to access what Logan has built out, the different fields and how they're pulled into the graph along with those beast modes. You'll be able to see those as you're making the changes in your data set or in your dashboard. So you'll be able to copy and paste that beast mode that he used into your card and replace the field names as necessary. So what we would do is we will grab this one here. I'm going to, So I'm going to edit this in the analyzer. You'll see that this is connected to that case data, the demo set here. So I'm going to click on that. And then from here, I'm going to swap it out with the other one. And I'm going to actually pick, let's do this one. Hopefully this one has some better data. So you'll see already I'm getting a warning that the new data set does not contain a data point with this name. And that's okay, because I'm sure we have some other identifying information for the client in this data set. So we're going to switch the data set. You'll see that all of the beast modes that were down here disappeared. These are actually going to disappear as well. So the client name no longer exists. It's going to prompt me to fix that right away. So what I need to do is come over here to my new data points, and I need to find what I want to use instead of the client name. So I'm probably going to use name, which is the project name. Okay. And it's going to tell me that the summary number is no longer available because the client name no longer exists. So what I'm going to do is pick here, and I'm going to change this to name as well. The summary number is what is giving you your count. So cases per phase. This is going to be a total number of all the cases here. You can go ahead and change this. So it says count of name. You could put 8, you put number of cases. Oops. Number of cases. There we go. So you can change that as you want. You can change the name of your report as you want. You can even add smart text where you pull in a date range or filter. This becomes useful when you are looking at specific time periods. And that you're going to use for your fee reports, for your referral reports. You're going to look at perhaps just the current year, and you're going to look at it by month. You can use smart text to say, I want in the title, I want you to tell me what date range I've selected. And I want you to tell me what I'm graphing by, and it will update that as you change those data points. All right, so here we are, and I am looking, you could add filters. So right now, this is not pulling the filters because sometimes you need to cross it out and add it again. So here we go. I guess that's all we have for phases. Oh, there we go. Now it updated my report. So we only apparently have 2 phases in our template, active and archived. And now the report has the correct data because I removed and then replaced that filter. So you can apply it as a filter, or if you wanted, because this is you're looking at your active inventory here, to exclude archived, you would pick not in and then archived. And then it's going to show you everything that's in a phase that's not archived. You have, actually, I'm not going to save this either because then I can't use it to demo when my clients want to take a look at what Periscope 2 can do. So let's go to cases per case type, because here you'll see that we have cases here that don't have a case type. So I want to show you what you can do to make it more clear what's going on there. So if I clicked on this here, it's going to show all of the cases in all of the phases. It's going to show all of the incident, like all 8, I guess 9 cases here. But when I click on that portion of the graph, I don't want to see all the cases. I want to see just the ones that are missing the case type, right? So that I could send this on to someone and say, hey, clean up your data. So the way we do that is by adding a beast mode. So here's going to be our first experience with beast modes. We are going to come in and we're going to add a calculated field. And we're going to call this missing case type. And we are going to use beast mode language. And again, if you have this card open, before you swap out the data set, if you have this card open in one tab while you're looking at the same card and making the changes in the other tab, you'll be able to see the beast modes that Logan's built out and be able to swap it. Once you get more familiar with it, it becomes easier to remember these. So this is going to be case when. So case when is, I want the cases basically where, or this should be when this field case type, incident type is null. So when it's empty, and then we're going to tell it missing case type. We're going to give it a name. When it's not empty, else, I want to pull in whatever data is in that field. And we're going to end. Go ahead and validate it. If your formula is wrong, it's going to let you know. And then we want to save this calculation on the data set so that we can use that in other cards. We're going to create our calculated field. Save it. Awesome. So now you'll see that we have missing case type here. And instead of having incident type here, I'm going to swap that out. And you'll see the same graph, but now that piece of the pie has a name. It's missing case type. So if we go ahead and click on save, and let's go back to the view you would be looking at if you were just viewing your report. So here's what we'd be looking at if we were just checking out our cards. Now, when I click on missing case type, it's drilling down and it's only pulling up those 4 cases that are missing the case type. So on our previous list of 9 cases, it was pretty easy to identify quickly which ones are missing a case type. But when you're talking about hundreds of cases, you're not going to want to get a list of hundreds of cases that you have to scroll through looking to see which ones are missing the case type. So this will help you drill down into that. All right. If anyone has any questions or comments or anything you want me to focus on, please feel free to drop that into the Q&A or into the chat. I know this is a webinar format, so it's not interactive, but I do want this to be valuable to you and useful, and want you to be able to walk away. And if your desire is to set these up yourself, to be able to do that. So these are both boards. Well, not this one. So cases per phase is a board, obviously, that'll be useful no matter what law type you have. So if it is Social Security, you could do that. You could see where, what cases, if your phases correspond to your application level, you could obviously pull that, see that breakdown here. You also have the ability to put in what's called a drill path. So let's pull this up. Say, for example, you're looking at treatment here and you want to see more information specifically about what those, more about those 433 cases. Maybe you want them broken down by paralegal. Maybe you want them broken down by case manager. And you'll have other boards that show that too. But if you wanted to be able to click on this bar and look at an additional data, like drill down into just these 433 cases specifically, you can add what's called a drill path. So instead of editing in the analyzer, we're going to edit the drill path here. So here is the main report. We're going to add a view. All right, so from here, we're looking at basically what we were already looking at. We will include phase. Okay, so we're going to exclude archived, because we don't need that. And what I want to do, instead of looking at my x-axis being my phases, what I want to do is look at paralegal. And I want to also update my series so that the paralegals' names are here. And I want to put for this one, all right, so that's good, not archived. So we are going to want to change the title as well, because we're no longer looking at cases per phase. We're drilling in a particular phase. We're drilling down to the team members that are handling it. So we're going to put cases in, and then we're going to use that smart text. We're going to use we're going to have it tell us what phase we picked. We're going to use phase per paralegal. Save and save. I don't want to do that. So now when I come back to that same report, here I am in my base report. Now, and I've got cases per phase. Now, when I drill down into treatment, you'll see cases excludes archived in treatment per paralegal. And you'll see of those 433 cases, who's holding those cases right there. So this is a concept that could be used in most boards. You can use it in, I'm trying to think of where I use it the most often. So when we're looking at cases where last activity is 30 days per attorney, once you click on the attorney, may want to see how those cases are spread out between the phases. What phase are those cases in specifically? Maybe it's a phase where we are not expecting an attorney to be touching this every 30 days. Maybe it's a phase where maybe it's inactive, or maybe it's like in workers' compensation, we are in the kind of post-SOL phase where they're just treating once a year to keep their case open to continue to toll SOL. So you could get a phase breakdown there. All right, no one in the chat or in question and answer. Let's go on over to the tasks data set. And I wonder, if I never did connect my report. I wonder if it's dropped in here. So let's come here. And it looks like I don't actually have any reports going there. It looks like they're going to this one. So that's project. The only thing that I struggle with is figuring out which folder they go into. And I'm sure there's a way to rename them, but honestly, I've never taken the time to figure it out. So here's my task data from today. I'm going to come in, I'm going to connect my data. And get the name of that report. I'm going to have this scheduled 6 a.m. I'm going to, and then save and run. So because task and audit reports are Filevine standard data points, there is no ability to customize them. They will have the same name as Logan's demo data set. I think there actually is one that's different, and that's because his demo set is also fake data. So I think the column is just misnamed. It doesn't match Filevine exactly. But it's a lot easier to swap these out in mass. I still would recommend that you not do that. And that's because you'll still lose the beast modes. And Logan, we do use a number of beast modes for the task boards. Because remember, we're pulling in, and I actually pulled in archived ones too. We're pulling all tasks. We're pulling in outstanding tasks. We're pulling in completed tasks. We're pulling in future tasks. We did not apply that criteria in Filevine because we want to be able to use the one data set to power all of our task boards. So we want to look at incomplete task data, but we also want to be able to look at task completion data. What's the average hit time per user? How long is it taking them on average to complete tasks? You can compare your create date to your completed date, but you can't use that if you set criteria in Filevine to exclude those that have been completed. So we need to use beast modes to basically handle that calculation in Filevine. And let's see here. So we'll go into the incomplete dashboard to take a look at those beast modes. So you'll see here that we're looking at incomplete tasks, which means due today and overdue. You're looking at total overdue. You're looking at total due today. So the first column is a combination of these two. Then you're looking at total pending, which means that these are future tasks. And that might not be, for some people, the most helpful data point, but if you're looking at the outstanding tasks someone has to see if maybe they're rolling them, maybe they're not doing them at all, maybe they just keep setting them for a future date and you're wondering how much is on someone's task, that can be helpful. And you'll see that we have these beast modes down here. And basically we use these to calculate how many are in any particular scenario here. And if we take, so what you will need to do though, for some of these is the date here is a static date. You will need to use the the formula for current date in DOMO. So let's start with one of those. So let's do total overdue. When we look at that beast mode, we start with the case one, right? So we want, so when the difference between, and this should be today and the target date, right? So when the difference between today and the target date is greater than one and completed is empty, then we're going to give it a 1 because we want to count it because that is overdue. If it's not, so if the target date is not greater than or equal to 1, or if completed date has a value, then we're going to give it a 0 or null value because we don't want to count it. So what you're going to need to do is, and target date, complete date, those are named just exactly as they are in your Filevine report, so you don't have to worry about it. It's this piece here. So if you come over to functions, you can look here to see what different functions you have available. So that date difference right here, and it will tells you what it is too. So it returns the number of days between two dates. So that's what we use here. We're looking for the difference between this date and this date, except we need for this date to be the current date. So we're going to take a look here, and there's two options. I can't remember which one to use. One didn't work for me. So we'll just pick this one, and you can double click it. And if you've highlighted it, it's going to go ahead and swap it out for you. And then validate. And if you get your green check mark, you've done it correctly. So now when you're using live data, which means you actually have like things compared to the current date, like you'll see this is how you'll need to do the formula for yours. Obviously with fake data, using current date doesn't work because you don't see any future tasks. Everything's in the past because this is old data. So if I were to change this calculated field, save it, close it, and what was that? Total overdue. There we go. Save it. All right. And then what else? Target hit. So this one will be helpful to you as well when you're looking at the difference between the completed date and the target date. These are standard. You'll just need to copy and paste from Logan's data set. You won't need to make any changes to this one. And for the most part, you will be able to copy and paste from Logan's data set. You won't need to make changes unless the field name is named something else. Then you'll need to swap out the field name. So I want to show you really quickly why we're using 1 and 0 here. So case when completed date is null. That means there is no complete date. That means that it's incomplete. So we are looking for tasks that are incomplete. We're going to take this incomplete task and we are pulling them up here into a column. So we could you could add whatever you want for columns. You could add additional data. So if you want the author name, you could pull whatever you want. But these are actual values here. So we're summing those. So for every task where there's no complete date, we're giving it a 1 so that when we apply in aggregation, when we apply the sum, it gives us the total count. That's why we're using the 1 and the 0 there. And that's what we did for the rest of these as well. And then we're summing them here. And I will tell you my first couple times I did these boards, I could not figure out what I was doing wrong. And that's because when I pulled these up here, I had no aggregation. And I could not figure out why, like if even one of them has no aggregation, your whole board's messed up. You'll see that we're not grouping them. I've got Derek here. I've got Derek here. I've got, him all over the place. Well, I want to see his name once, and I want to see the total number of incomplete tasks. So that's why we need to pick sum here. And that looks better. Oops, total incomplete. Sum. You can also change your data label and your data format. So if you were looking at financial boards, you could actually choose to see these as currency values, which is helpful. And you can enter a data label. So if you want to call it something other than what the actual, like if you want to change the column name, you can do that as well. And then you could change the time period. So for incomplete task dashboard, that's not really you're not going to do that, but you would do that for a financial board. You may be looking at, instead of all time, you may be looking at just the current year, and you may want to view it by, and this isn't the type of board that will allow it, but you could also choose to graph by month or by week or by quarter. So if you wanted to see your fees by quarter, fees by month, fees by week, you could do that as well. And that would be the default view, but you could go in and adjust it when you're looking at the card. And that is all I have. We have a couple minutes left if anyone had any questions. Sorry, my watch is telling me to stand. I'm just gonna put my arm down and cheat. All right, so I believe everyone who attended will be getting a copy of the recording. I will pop my email in here if anyone wants my list of the commonly used fields, or it needs the S3 bucket instructions. I actually even have a spreadsheet for the beast modes I commonly use. So if anyone would like those, please feel free to email me and I will send those out to you. I'll put it in the chat. Let me put it here too. Oh, I can't. Yes. All right. Got it. Okay. Also, it's just Stephanie@vineskills.com. So if anyone doesn't have a chance to grab it from the chat, it's super easy. And that's it. So thank you all for attending, and we hope to see you next week.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.